Now let's cover the overloaded functions. It is actually a very important topic and very important concept. So overloaded functions are those functions which have the same name but they are written in more than one way. So to understand it, imagine two factories that makes the same thing in different flavors. So they will take different kind of input or the ingredients, but their main purpose is to do the same thing, is to make the same thing but in different ways. Now let's look at them in more detail. So overloaded function is a function that has the same name but different number of parameters or different type of parameters. So what do we mean by that? Let's look at that. So let's say we have a function name, let's use the same name. Let's say we have a function name add and it's taking a variable integer, right? And its return type is int. Okay, now if I'm saying that if I want to make an overload function of add, obviously the name will be same, but the number of parameters or type of parameters can be different. So maybe this time the type of parameter can be float. So right, so this is an overload function of, these both are overloaded function. Now let's make another overload function. So I have a third overloaded function, and this time let's change the number of parameters. So maybe this time this function is taking 2 parameters instead of 1. So this is what we mean by these lines. Now there is one more important thing, which is return type of the function may or may not be different. So only the return type, if only the return type is different, we can't say that the functions are overloaded. So what I mean is, for example, let's take the same function add, and what I mean is that this function has integer return type. So if I say that I have another function float add, so this function has integer return type and this function has float return type, but they are not overloaded function. Why? Because return type alone is not sufficient for the compiler to determine which method is to be executed at runtime. So this means is that, for example, this is your main program, and in your main program you called add, right? Now the compiler does not know which add are you calling, this one or this one. So this won't work. This is wrong. Now let's see one more thing here. Let's say this is my main program and I called add in my main program like this. So the compiler will know which of these functions is to be called because of this function call. Why? Because first of all, the number of arguments, there is one argument, not 2. So this function won't be called, obviously it has 2 arguments. So these are the 2 functions which can be called. Now you can look that the argument that is passed is 1. It is an integer. So there is only one of these 2 functions which is accepting integer. So in this case, the function that will be called is this. Now let's say I made another function call and I pass 9.5. So in this case, this function will be called, right? This one. Why? Because it's taking 1 argument and it's float. So compiler can easily recognize that. And in the third case, let's make another function call. And in this case, I maybe am passing 2 integer variables. So you can easily now guess that which function will be called in this case, this function, right? Because it's taking 2 arguments. This function call is sending 2 arguments and both of these are integer arguments. So obviously this function call is calling this function. So compiler can easily recognize that. In this case, the compiler cannot recognize that which function is to be called because of this function call, right? So the name of the function can be same, but either use different number of parameters or different type of parameters. Return type is not alone sufficient for the compiler to know that which function should be called with this function call. Let's see some examples of overloaded function. So this is a function test and its return type is integer. It's taking no argument. There is another function test. It's taking 1 argument. So a function with 0 arguments, a function with 1 argument, another function with 1 argument, but the return type is different. The data type is different. Double. The data type of the parameter is double. And a fourth overloaded function test with two arguments. So these are all valid examples of overloaded functions. So let's look at another example. I have a function with the name same function. So this is, the first one is taking one argument, the second is taking one argument too, but the data type is different, it's float. And the third function is taking two arguments, integer and double. So same name, different arguments and different type of arguments. That's what an overloaded function is.